Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the GG Report. I'm glad that you're tuned in. This is your show and my show, and I want you to engage with us. Today we have an exciting topic. We're going to be talking about effective communication and why it matters. And some of you may not think that communication is a big deal, but it is a very, very important subject. At the center of what it means to be human is the ability to communicate. So you need to get your communication right if you're going to have your relationship okay, and if you're in the marketplace or you're running a ministry, any organization its success depends clearly on how it's able to communicate. And so today, that's what we're going to go into, and we're also going to look at how that also affects church ministry. I know some of you watching are pastors, are preachers, and you know, you come from different backgrounds, and we want to try and help you understand how central communication is and how you can be effective. To the extent that you are effective communicator, to that extent you can be successful and succeed in life in many ways. So welcome to the GG Report. As always, the GG Report is a platform where we hold big, bold conversations, big, bold ideas, and honest conversation on a broad range of subjects, socio-economic, philosophical, theological, political, everything in between. And today we're going to go into the idea of communication. This is one of the major issues in social interactions. And today I have a guest with me on the show. Welcome to the show, Ruth.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very nice.
It's a pleasure to be at Elevate.
All right. Very nice. So before we turn to Ruth, I would like to introduce her briefly, and then after that I'm going to dive into the conversation, then we will talk. Please remember to share the links. We are live on Facebook, Elevate TV Kenya, and live on YouTube, Elevate TV Kenya. So if you're watching from one of those platforms, please share with your friends, and let's get this conversation going. So my guest is Ruth Musembi, and Ruth is a communicator, educator, and an ordained minister. So she's going to be telling us about her ministry, and what she does in that particular arena. Ruth also holds an MA, a Master of Arts in Communication, and a Bachelor's of Education, and she is a PhD candidate at Daystar University, and so that's a very nice thing. And then Ruth has served as a communication manager and is the CEO of Silcom Consulting, which focuses on training leaders to improve their productivity through result-oriented communication and behavioral science. So I'm sure you're ready for this conversation. So Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. And I've had a chat with you. You know, we have been in forums together. And I know that you have a big story to tell us about communication, because that's what you literally eat and breathe, communication. So please, let's start first of all with a brief background of yourself and what motivated you to pursue a career in communication.
So once more, thank you very much for having me. And I am a communicator, like you said. I'm an educator, and I'm a minister of the word. So I started out my career as a teacher, taught in high school for 3 years, and then went to a teacher training college, Thogoto, for 2 years. And then by God's providence, and I underline that, God's providence,
Yes.
I got a scholarship to go to Daystar University.
Okay.
That was in the year 2000. So at that point in time, there were only 2 master's programs,
Okay.
Christian Ministries and Communication.
Okay.
And for some reason, I chose Communication. To be honest, I didn't know what that was.
Okay.
So I started that way, God providing the way. And I became so good in it that by my 2nd year, I was already teaching.
Okay.
I was asked to teach some classes. And by the time I graduated, by God's grace, I was the best student of that year.
Okay.
Something which I entered by providence,
Yes.
but it became my thing. So I think I was born to communicate and to train.
All right.
Yes.
And I think that's very interesting. Diving into this communication arena and then finding that was like where you really are wired. Okay, that's very interesting. So then tell us about your teaching experience, and then how you then moved on into the, you moved on to the corporate sector, and fill us on that.
So there's something called transferable experience.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people really ask me, Ruth, how did you manage to transition from being a teacher to actually going to the corporate world?
Yes.
Because a lot of people struggle, and I want to encourage somebody, you can shift. What you do is to look at the experience you have where you are at, and look at how it can serve in another place.
Okay.
And then when you start packaging yourself, you make sure that you take cognizance of that. So yeah, I finished my my master's in 203, and I saw a job in the newspapers, and I applied. And this is the thing I tell people: let's not believe the stories we hear that some of these jobs are already earmarked for people. Yes and no.
Yes.
And because you have no idea which one is earmarked and which one is not, go for it.
Yes.
So
just apply.
I applied, and I got called for an interview, and I did the interview in 2004. And I got the job. I didn't know anyone, and it was a big government institution. I didn't know anyone. And I served for 5 years there. And then I saw another advertisement on newspaper. I applied. I didn't know anyone. I went for the interview. I got the job, and I was there for 8 years.
Okay.
And then so after those 13 years, I decided to come out and work with leaders, because there are gaps I saw. And I felt that being an employee, I'm not able to intervene the way my mind was showing me that we need to intervene in the area of communication.
Okay.
And so for the last 4 years, I've been running Silcom Consulting Limited, working with leaders, thinking together, how can we use communication, which is a very powerful tool to improve productivity in their organizations and to make things work. Because a lot of organizations have beautiful strategic plans, very wonderful stuff, but time and again they are not attaining their goals, their targets. And when you listen to them, many of them tell you, we don't communicate in this place.
Okay.
And so I was like, someone needs to answer that question, and
Right.
here I am.
Okay,
Yes.
and I think I love that. In fact, returning to the transferable skills bit that you've mentioned, because I think a lot of people, and I'm going to, we're going to go back to the whole idea of career and transitioning, because I think that's an important conversation, and it's tied to the whole idea of transferring skills. So if you're a teacher, you can transfer that teaching skill, the ability to communicate to students, look them in the eye and see this guy is not getting what I'm saying, and work out a way of getting through to the student. And you can transfer those skills to any dimension. Even ministry, preaching is actually teaching technically. And all that. So what you're saying is that very, very important. Okay, so now you signed up for your PhD. How is that going?
It's really going well, and when you study and you are working, the progress can be quite slow.
Yes.
So I've been at it, and I'm researching on communication during times of change.
Okay.
So a lot of organizations, churches, and whichever type of organization, they will go through change once, twice, many times.
All right.
The best example is the COVID season that we are still living in, and it brought so many changes.
Right.
if you read literature, you will see that many leaders are struggling on how do we communicate effectively when we are undergoing a change process.
Okay.
So that's what I'm studying.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. I wish you all the best as you dig through the literature. I'm also a student. I'm also doing my PhD at the moment. Maybe we should be talking about that. Some of these things we throw into such conversations.
Exactly.
And I know that, you have to do a lot of reading, and so that then you can get a handle of where, things are, where the gaps are, and all that. Okay, so we can leave that behind. Let's now go to, you also are linked with ministry. You are involved in ministry, pastoral ministry. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about our pastoral ministry, and then now we'll come back to talk about communication proper, the bits and pieces that we need to talk about.
Yes, so I am an ordained pastor, and I was ordained in 2006.
Right.
But I've been serving with my husband since 1997,
Okay.
when we got married. And even before then, actually where I come from in rural Kenya, if you are a lady and you are a pastor, they call you pastress.
All right.
Interesting. So I was a pastress for quite some time, and then I got married to Pastor
Yes.
Reverend Musembi.
Yeah.
And we've been serving together up till now. Right now, I support him alongside him because he oversees some churches in Eastern Province, Machakos, Kitui, and there are some in Kilifi. So I work alongside him as a very supportive minister together with him.
Yes.
To make sure that we work with the leaders of those churches so that they can build the people of God and help them to become what God wants them to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's going well, I hope.
Very well. Very well.
How did COVID affect the ministry, by and large, now that you are in the heart of it? So, we don't want to go into the details, but in your own view, how did that affect the ministry by and large?
So there was opportunities and in the loss. So the loss was the loss of face-to-face time. And in communication, we always believe that face-to-face communication is the richest form of communication. So there was loss in that sense. But you see, even in crisis communication, we say every crisis comes with an opportunity.
Okay.
In fact, the word crisis, from the original language, I think Chinese or Japanese language, it means both opportunity and challenge.
Okay.
So you just turn the coin and see. So what was the opportunity? I mean, we were able now to start ministering to so many people, what you
Right.
could call the church at large.
Yes.
Because you are on one location, but you can minister to the whole world.
Absolutely.
And we managed to leverage on technology, on social media, and people became more confident even to seek God on their own, because it was impossible to call the pastors and they come like before. So in a sense also Christians were able to understand how to seek God, search the scriptures for themselves. And yeah, so there were many opportunities. Of course there was pain, and God helps us through pain. As people, and the Bible says when you go through the waters, they shall not sweep you. We are here. We were not swept.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we survived it. And that's very interesting. In fact, here at Life Church, we if you look at our Elevate TV, you will see we call it Church Unlimited. We actually discovered, I mean, it occurred to us that church, as long as you can communicate, it is actually unlimited. There is no limit. Today we appreciate the power of Zoom and all the other technologies associated with being able to communicate. So pastors and bishops going into Facebook Live. Man, I'm telling you, it was dramatic because some of them were doing it for the first time.
Yes.
So that is very good. So now let's talk about communication, because I want us to dive into that because we want to show the depth, and also talk about some of the tools, how we can become effective in communication. So we can begin from why does effective communication matter? And even if you want to define communication, so that then we have a beginning, you are free to do that.
So effective communication matters for many reasons, but I'll give you 3.
Okay.
But before I give you the 3 reasons, let's first define communication.
Right.
See, the other day I was training somewhere.
Yes.
And I told my participants, take your phone, go to Mr. Google, type what is communication, and let's see what comes up.
Yes.
And when you do that, when many people do that, they get a definition of communication that is incorrect. Because Mr. Google and many of the people who just understand communication at the top level, they think communication is passing information from one person to another. So when you transmit information to another person, a lot of people assume and imagine that they have communicated.
Okay.
Now that is not the complete picture.
Okay.
Transmission of information, sharing information is one out of three things that constitute communication.
Okay.
So communication is creating understanding between two people.
Okay.
Yes. So if you pass information to me and I don't understand, you've not communicated.
Okay.
So in many organizations, people send emails, they say we have communicated. They call a staff meeting, they talk, people go, they say they have communicated. The question is, has common understanding been created? Now for that common understanding to be created, there's a whole process, and I believe that's what we are going to be talking about. But why communication matters is three things and more. One is that communication is the most important social skill that every human being should have.
Absolutely.
That ability to create common understanding with the people around us, at home, at work, socially, and wherever we meet people. The most important social skill is communication.
Absolutely. You can say that again, Ruth. And those of you that are watching and following this conversation, we want to remind you, we're talking about effective communication. And I love that definition of creating mutual?
Common understanding.
Common understanding. So until the other person, you on the same page, I think the other way of putting it, unless you're on the same page, you really understand. There is a common understanding. There's something here, we understand what it is. And there is congruence in what we are defining. Then communication has not happened.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Right.
So the second reason why communication matters is it's the glue. Communication, we need to look at communication as glue, the glue that holds an organization together.
Right.
And an organization is anywhere where there are more than two people. So
Right.
even a family is an organization in its own right. So how do you bring people together and then each person is independent? What is that thing that is going to connect them and harmonize them and bring unity of purpose?
Okay.
It is communication.
Okay.
It is a glue. And if we even go to the depth, we actually know there is no organization without communication. So if you see an organization that is successful, chances are that their communication is great.
Okay.
And the opposite is true. If your organization is struggling, one of the first places you need to go and check is communication, because we actually believe as experts of communication that communication constitutes organizations. Now that's big jargon, but what it means is that to create an organization, you need communication. So if you do not communicate, you cannot even create
the organization.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Communication constitutes the organization.
Yes.
To the extent that there is an organization, it has come together by communication. The various elements that make the organization, investors, the employees, and everyone. For an organization to function, including a church.
Yep.
A church is actually constituted by people who desire to communicate with each other.
Exactly.
And say, yeah, please, here we have a congregation, please come. And when they come, there is communication, and that's how then you end up with an institution that you can call a church.
Yes,
absolutely.
And the third thing is that communication helps organizations engage people we call mission critical stakeholders. Mission critical stakeholders, because when you start an organization, even the Apostolic House, for example, there are stakeholders, there are people who, if they support you, you succeed.
Yes.
If they do not support you, you begin to fail. You will try to move, but at some point you will come to a halt. So communication is what we use to engage people who are critical to the achievement of our mission. And that's why today we talk about strategic communication.
Okay.
And I will talk about that a bit later, that when you start communicating, it has to come from a strategic point of view.
Right.
What are we trying to achieve in this organization? So who are those mission critical stakeholders? How do we bring them on board? How do we create understanding between ourselves and them?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. And whether you're talking about corporate, whether you're talking about church organization, there are those critical people. I like the way you're calling them mission critical stakeholders. Absolutely. That's very nice. So those three main things, the glue, one of them. I think
the glue, the social skill, and the engagement of mission critical stakeholders.
Absolutely. Engagement of the mission critical people. That's very good. So those are the three, among other things, that are critical to effective communication. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Of course, among others, like improving productivity, building a strong team, resolving conflicts and differences in organizations. There's so much wealth that people can glean from communication.
Absolutely. Okay, very good. So, and then of course, whenever organizations are constituted, they are communicating somewhat, there will be challenges, and I think we can then talk about the challenges associated with communication. And I think I like the way you put it right. Communication is about creating common understanding. And I know that doesn't happen all the time. So, and then of course emerges conflicts and other things. So what are some of the common challenges in getting communication right?
Okay.
Yes.
So if we want to get communication right, we must start with the first things first.
Right.
And the first thing first is the proper understanding of what communication is.
Yes.
So one thing that makes many organizations get it wrong is the moment they start equating communication with information sharing.
Okay.
So you are the CEO, you just share information, you don't stop to say how is it landing, how are people receiving this information. Then, so I would urge every leader to redefine what communication means for them. Move it from sharing information to creating mutual understanding.
Right.
Then the other place where people get it wrong is sometimes, you see, a human being is a complete whole package, how God created us.
Right.
So there is a mind, there is a heart, and then there is the actions that we do. So a lot of times people communicate to the mind,
to the brain,
and so you'll find sometimes, even if you look at some of the presentations leaders make, they are very heavy on facts, on data, on complicated concept, which is not bad. But the problem is that's not how human beings consume information.
Okay.
If you want human beings to people to take action,
yes,
out of what you tell them, then you must go beyond communicating to the mind only and communicate to the heart.
Okay.
So I tell leaders, we must do a thorough job. We communicate with the head, we communicate with the heart, and then you know what happens? The hands and the feet, now they take action.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times people will say, how come I've been communicating and these people are not taking action? They are not doing what we want done. If it is employees, they are not supporting the vision. The question is, maybe you are churning so much head knowledge, head information, facts, figures, charts, and you are not humanizing them. People take action when their emotions are moved. So there is a way to communicate until you can move emotions, but some people do not know how to do that.
Right.
So you find that affects communication. But the other problem, and where people get it wrong, leaders and all, is that if you ask today many organizations, very few of them have something called an organizational listening mechanism.
Wow.
Yes. And that's a big one.
That's a big one. That's
a big one.
Yeah.
Because the one side is passing information, sharing information.
Yes.
The other side of the coin is listening. And actually listening begins from before you create the message. Because you need to talk to these mission critical stakeholders and find out what do they care about.
Yes.
There is something called the NICE framework. You need to find out what are the needs of the people I want to communicate with.
Yes.
What are their interests?
Right.
What are their concerns? What are their expectations? That is listening.
Yes.
So after listening and getting all that information, now you sit down and create messages that are both head-based and heart-based, then now you know that when I speak to these people, because I already listened to what is bothering them, I know the information they need, I know what is interesting to them, I know what they are fearing, what they are concerned about.
Right.
I know what they expect of us. So when I create messages based on that knowledge, that message will land better. It will resonate, as people say.
Yes.
And once a message resonates, people take action.
Yes.
But you go to many organizations. The other thing is some of the listening mechanisms that we have always known. Suggestion box, for example. I think now that one has been overtaken by time. But we used to have this thing where you go, there's a box there, they tell you can put in some suggestions. And many things happened. One is you put your suggestions there, probably nobody opens the box.
Yes.
So with time, employees get to understand, nobody even cares about what we say. So they stop saying.
Okay.
Or you find a situation where I was training once and I asked some participants, so how does listening happen in this organization? So say there's a box, but the problem is the CCTV camera is right where the box is.
Right.
So there is no way I'm going to risk walking there to drop my suggestion or my complaint.
Yes.
Because I'll be seen. So sometimes I don't think it was deliberate for that organization to put the CCTV there, but it was just lack of thought on even does it matter where we put that box.
Absolutely.
Now let's come to technology. Today, most people don't use boxes. So you tell your employees, we have an open door policy in this place. So anything you want to say, come in, my door is open, I'm willing to listen. But the problem is manifold. One is people have different personalities. There are people who are very confident, who can walk into the CEO's office and say, sir, I would like to discuss 2 things with you.
Yes.
And they will do it. There are other people who, even if come rain, come shine, that's not how they are wired. And especially culturally,
yes,
we, especially the culture in this part of the world, there's a way we hold our leaders in awe.
Yes.
So it almost tells us, you are doing the wrong thing.
There are cultural barriers.
Yes,
around,
cultural barriers.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Good. Now, Ruth, you'll be surprised that we have to now to go to a break, and I'm really enjoying the things you're opening up, and so I'm going to cut you short. We'll come back to that listening mechanisms, so that. And I love what you're exploring, because there is a lot of depth in that, and there is also a lot of lessons, even for church organizations that think they are communicating. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe you're following this conversation, you're enjoying the conversation, you're learning about communication and why it's effective. And so we're going to go into a short break. When we come back, we're going to return to that particular conversation on listening, how organizations make claims that we listen to what you are saying, including politicians. We say we are listening to the ground and stuff like that. So, so to the extent that you're listening, we'll know whether that is working. So take a short break. We'll come back shortly, and then we'll return to the conversation. All right, don't go away.
A new show is in the offing, and this show is dubbed Nico Works Not Us. This show is going to expose, to encourage, and to bless the work of your hands at the workplace. Don't touch that dial.
Welcome back to, this is the GG Report. We are talking about communication, why it matters. My guest here, Ruth Musembi, is telling it as it is, and I believe you're enjoying the conversation. Before we went to the break, we were talking about, listening and how organizations, have all kinds of mechanisms for, listening, including what we call suggestion boxes and open door policy. You can coming into the CEO's office anytime you want, but we know that always doesn't quite work. And even the suggestion boxes sometimes are held as suspect. I don't know what churches do, if at all they do anything about listening. Mm-hmm. Now we are talking about communication, and we are in the thick of this communication. So keep following this conversation. Ruth, mm-hmm. I think you've told us some very profound things about communication, listening, the bit about listening. So tell us more about that listening bit and why sometimes organizations get it wrong.
Yeah, thank you. So like I said, it's a mechanism that is needed. Mm-hmm. So every leader needs to say, what is our listening mechanism in this organization?
All right.
So whether it's a church, even at home, our home is an organization.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised that what is a listening mechanism in our homes? Mm-hmm. As parents, are we listening? How are we listening?
To our children.
To our children, and what avenues have we created for them to voice what they need to voice, because sometimes they have things to say and probably the environment is not correct. Mm-hmm. So back to organizations. So if an organization does not have a mechanism on how they listen, that is the first thing after listening to my talk that I would encourage them to think about.
Right.
Because probably they have succeeded in the aspect of sharing information, although maybe they need to tweak a few things here and there, but a lot of them where they are really struggling is hearing people out. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the suggestion box, we talked about the open door policy, which could be interrupted by our cultural inclinations, by our personalities. Mm-hmm. And so it means if I'm a CEO and I'm saying I have an open door policy, I also need to do the same nice framework. Remember, the one I said, you need to know the needs, the interests, the concerns, and the expectations of people.
Yes.
Even on the front of listening.
Yes.
Have a conversation with your people and ask them, if I were to hear what you would like me to hear from you, what methods would you want to use? So some will tell you, I want an anonymous email address. Others will tell you, I am free to come and speak. And so it can just be a small survey. And today technology has really helped us. If you do something like Google Forms, Microsoft Forms, SurveyMonkey, there are so many of these free research data gathering tools.
Yes.
Then you gather data, you find out from my people, how do they want me to listen to them? So those who want to come, you may not know who said what, because the survey is always anonymous for it to be more authentic.
Yes.
But from the data, you'll be able to see a good number of my staff are free to come and talk to me.
Yes.
Some people would like an anonymous way of communicating with me. Some people would like, and that would be a box, an anonymous email, a hotline, whatever it is.
Yes.
And this applies to both external stakeholders and internal stakeholders. That way now you can be able to harvest a lot of information that will help you to tweak how you are running the organization. And let me tell you, organizations that value listening have been able even to grow in leaps and bounds, because in the listening is where ideas come, innovations come. So listening is not just about complaints, although those are very good. They help us improve. But it's also about innovative ideas. Yes, so let people tell you, because you might be struggling with a process that is not going right.
Yes.
And you as leaders, you sit in the boardroom, and you know what? We always believe the people nearest, this thing of things on the ground are different, to speak the Kenyan way, is very profound.
Yes.
Because even in an organization, if we want to tweak a process in the finance department, I kid you not, people in that department may give you the best, it's not even may, will have possibly the best solutions to that problem.
Yes.
But we sit in the boardroom.
Right.
We are not the ones handling that process. We prefer solutions, and we take them back to them to implement. And we never listened to them. And probably they just know if you tweak this or tweak that, things will work.
Absolutely.
So listening is very good, because you also harvest information, ideas that can take you to the next level. But the tragedy is one. And every time I think about it, I am very sad that a lot of listening is vain listening. In vain.
Oh, really?
Yes. Why do I call it in vain listening? Because we listen to people, we do nothing about what they said.
Yes.
Yes. The other day I was talking to my daughter and she was like, Mom, you know, in our school we have these challenges, this challenge. And often the class teacher comes and tells us, tell me what you want me to do for you.
Yes.
So she said sometimes they will spend like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and everybody will say, can you have a laptop for us so that we can check a few things? Can you do this? Then the teacher will say, yes, yes, yes. And then she says, 1 term, 2 terms, 1 year, nothing.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens. And it is very, very, what can I say?
Yeah, frustrating actually.
Frustrating for people, because why listen to us if what we say does not matter?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, why listen to us if it doesn't matter? So listening in vain for leaders means it is almost dishonest, because you create an impression that we have a listening mechanism, that we listen to what people say,
yes,
but you do nothing. If it is external stakeholders, you send questionnaires to them, or you call them. Can you imagine calling people for a stakeholder meeting and you spend their whole morning and
Right.
they left their work, they
Yes.
left their things, and you listen to them, or anyone else with a point like that,
Yes.
and after that, that is the last they hear of you.
absolutely.
And let me tell you, 2019, I was doing some project for the government of Kenya.
Yes.
And we were going around the country listening. listening.
Yes.
And we went to one place in the northeastern province, counties,
Yes.
and there was a courageous person in the room.
Yes.
And he just said, I would like to make my contribution. Then we said, go ahead. He said, is this going to be just like the last one we had? Because a few months ago, some people like you were here, we were in this same room, we gave them our ideas. That is the last that we had of them.
Yes.
So we see you have come. Is this going to be the same?
Yeah.
You know,
That's a very honest, actually.
So leaders, if they really want to improve communication, rather than continuing to send more and more information, let's have a listening mechanism, and let us not listen in vain. Let's do something about what we hear.
Right.
Let's value the voice of people. Now, the challenge is one. A lot of leaders think, if I have to respond, then I must do everything that I'm being asked to do. And that's not true.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. If you talk to staff in any place,
Yes.
you listen to them, you ask them, what the top 3 things that you want us to do. One of them will be increase our salaries.
Yes.
Or let us work half day. You know, some things. So it doesn't mean that now everything that you listen and hear, you must do.
Yes.
And this is where communication experts come in, because we are now able to help you craft a response that is believable and satisfactory.
Okay.
Yes. So, for example, suppose people say, we want to be leaving at 2 p.m. You know, the weather is so bad, it's so hot in this office.
Yes.
Or we want you to increase our salary. It's possible to come up with an explanation that is not a lie.
Yes.
And that makes sense. And some explanations would be as simple as, if it is in the course of the year and we've already done our annual budget, and probably people are saying, now we want to be having 10 o'clock tea. We never used to have tea.
Yes.
So we come back and say, yes, we heard you. We listened, we heard you, we hear what you are telling us. You would like to start having coffee at lunchtime and at tea break and at 4. But look here, because of the way we plan and where we are in the planning cycle,
Yes.
we have taken note of what you've said.
Yes.
And in the new planning cycle, we will look into whether this can be possible.
Yes.
However, in the meantime, we also ask you, would you have an idea of how this could be done?
Yes.
So that listening is a continuous iterative process, like back and forth.
Yes, exactly.
And leaders should not fear going back to say, you said this to us, we heard you, but we are not able to implement it right now.
Yes.
However, this is our perspective, and this is what we propose. Yes, so I don't know, I feel like sometimes leaders are too afraid of just coming back and saying,
Yes.
we heard you. Because what they do is, they listen. If something can be done, they do it, if at all.
Yeah.
If something cannot be done, we bury our head in the sand. You know, like the ostrich, hiding with the grass.
We just keep quiet and let
Just
the
keep
matter
quiet,
die.
and then let the
natural-
matter die. It doesn't die.
Yeah, it doesn't die,
Yeah,
and
it
I
doesn't
think
die.
it leaves. So it just chips away at the credibility of the leaders.
Yes.
Because they came out, really saying, we want to hear what you're to say. And then people communicated because they trusted the leaders. And then after that, the leaders just drop the ball, nothing happens. So certainly trust actually begins to dissipate, and people, kind of like no longer trust the leaders. And maybe perhaps it also plays out. It plays out in every dimension, whether you're talking about politics, whether you're talking about in the, even in a church environment, even in the family, it's the same thing. If you are dad and you promise some cake, you had better deliver the cake or give a very, very serious explanation why you cannot afford the cake for the birthday or whatever it is. It's absolutely true. So those are many challenges, and I like the way, Sorry, there's one more that I want to complete this part with.
Yes. So there's what I call the communication triangle, the result-oriented communication triangle.
All right.
So a triangle obviously has 3 corners.
Yes.
So one corner is sharing information, which a lot of us seem to be aware of.
Yes.
Communication, you share information. The other corner is listening. Organizational listening must be made and seen to happen.
Okay.
But the third corner of that triangle is consistent practices. Because can you imagine a situation where an organization is sharing information, disseminating information about different things?
Yes.
They are also beginning to listen, but then whatever it is that they commit to do, they don't do.
All right.
So the actions.
Yes.
So one corner is share information, the other corner is listen and respond, and the third corner is let your actions be consistent with the things that you are saying with your mouth.
Absolutely.
So a lot of places, that's where communication gets derailed. Because now, when you start hearing people saying this is just a talk shop, what does that mean? This is a PR exercise. What does that mean? It means we are saying good things. We are exciting people with the things that we are saying. We are even listening to them and giving them a sense of importance, but we are doing nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or we are preaching water and drinking wine. So leaders have to see to it that and that's why a lot of places, public relations is not honored, because it looks like painting, whitewashing a tomb.
Yes.
Washing a cup outside, inside it is dirty.
Right.
I always say communication must proceed from good character. Even organizations have character.
Yes. Yes.
So these consistent practices is the character part.
It's what actually forms the character. That is what actually create. It's part of the culture of the organization, the practices.
Yes.
What you do every day.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is that you communicate, you listen, but if there isn't subsequent action and consistent practice, then you create. So to the extent that your practice is not consistent, to that extent your character is flawed, isn't it?
Yes, it is flawed, and the communication will be frowned upon. People will just be like, you can call your staff to a room and talk to them nice things and everything, but there will be. And remember, we said communication is creating understanding.
Yes.
They'll just be sitting there waiting you to finish, and they go back to their things because they know nothing will ever change.
Absolutely. And that's a real indictment on leaders. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe as you follow this conversation, you are hearing what we're talking about and the need to be effective communicators. And my guest is actually a consultant and an expert in communication. I'm sure so far you already picked up very, very wonderful ideas. Those of you who are probably wondering how you can get in touch with Ruth Musembi, there are numbers on the screen. You can write to that number. Is our church and Elevate TV number. And we can pick up that information and link you up. So we'll be able to respond to your whatever message you write there. So don't worry. And then I'll also be asking her towards the end to tell us how we can get in touch with her. So Ruth, before we run out of time, we never have infinite time. I want us to talk about how can a pastor become an effective communicator. In the corporate sector, there are issues, and of course you get paid, because that's what you do. You style people up, you refine them in terms of communication. Let's talk about how that then plays out in the church arena. And since you're a practitioner, you are pastoress, or you know, wherever you work you work with your husband as a pastor. So, how does that? How can a pastor become an effective communicator?
So I know and I believe the same principles apply. So first things first, every pastor needs to take time to understand. When I say I'm communicating, what am I doing?
Yes.
So the same thing I've explained. So understand that communication is creating common understanding. Understand that when you pass information, whether it is through the church bulletin or through the website or wherever, whichever way you communicate with your people, that you've done a third of the work.
Okay.
So go ahead and establish a listening mechanism in your church. Listen to people.
Yes.
And respond to them. And then the practices in the church, the practices, the culture of the place needs to be consistent with the messaging that is going out. That is one. Two, pastors need to be very authentic and relatable. So a lot of times, sometimes, I don't know whether it is inadvertent or for whatever reason, you find that pastors sometimes tend to look like they are far. Because why? The way our work is structured as pastors, when we deliver our messages on Sundays or during meetings, there's no interaction per se, except when people respond either to the call to come to the Lord or to the call to come and get prayers in front or from wherever they are sitting. But this, actually, I've interacted with a lot of pastors who are very difficult to interact with.
Yes.
Because there's that place where they are at, and where even the congregation looks at them, they
have placed them somewhere. Yes.
And maybe it is the way their work is structured, and then there's where everyone is. So a pastor who wants to excel in communication needs to begin to become relatable.
All right.
And become authentic, so that people can realize this is a person like us.
Yeah.
We can approach pastor, we can talk to them, and we can help. But also, pastors need to start understanding who are the mission critical stakeholders in our church, in our organization.
I'm glad you've come back to that.
Who are these people? So that they need to map them.
Yes.
Map all the people that you need to be communicating with, and then begin to ask yourself, what messages do I need to send to each of these people?
Okay.
And what channels of communication do they need? Do they prefer?
Yes.
Because some people prefer SMS, others prefer WhatsApp, others prefer, I don't know whether churches use email communication with members, but, and we are not just talking of members alone. Churches have staff.
Yes, yes.
You will be surprised to go to some church staff members and find the kind of disquiet and discontentment and lack of information that is there, and people don't know what is going on. But of course, because the pastor is at a level, they dare not even speak. So I think pastors need to demystify themselves and become more relatable, able to reach out and just apply the same principles of communication that every other leader is applying.
Absolutely. And Ruth, I am glad that you're saying this, because I believe that the churches, especially churches that have they have more than one organization. So they actually have maybe a church as a school, it has another kind of profit-making institution and all that. So churches tend to grow very big and become actually really proper corporations. And they are still led by the same people. They are led by the pastors, and these are men of God, they are preachers. Say institutions, within the institutions that they work with, there may be a lot of disquiet, a lot of confusion, and a lot of unsaid things. People are not happy, they are not they cannot reach the men of God and all that. That's a very big problem.
Yes, and I've heard it a lot, that people saying, when you work for a Christian-based organization, the assumption is that should be the best place to work, things work, people love each other, things move. But many times you hear a lot of complaints about what is not working, how the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing, and so on and so forth. So I think it's important, the same way I believe pastors will want to run their churches with the proper management principles,
yes,
is the same way I would invite them to also run communication using the proper communication principles so that things can run. And one of the things a pastor would do a favor for themselves is just to take a few courses or get trained in communication, because there is what we call leadership communication. So I would encourage pastors to take that course, to find a course called leadership communication somewhere and take it, because it will be able to show them how to link the strategy where you are. Like now, this is January. I've seen many churches online, they have themes for this year.
Yes.
So this will be the year of XYZ. This is what we are going to do.
Here we are talking about the year of dominion.
Yes. So
manifesting dominion.
Manifesting dominion. So I know that there are action steps that you are going to put in place for that to happen.
Yeah.
So the question is, who is helping communicate that?
Okay.
Does the leader have the tools, the competencies, the knowledge to be able to communicate that and to rally everyone together?
Absolutely.
And just to, like you said, if they have a church with schools and hospitals and everything, how are we putting everyone together? So pastors should feel free to look. There is no end to the search of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Ruth, that pastors need to, to study, to develop their skills in communication. And while with that, there's something else that you mentioned earlier on, and we left it hanging, the whole issue of PR. The governments have been accused of playing PR games. I guess even churches might also be accused of playing PR game. Where do we stand on this? Should churches hire, and this is the question I want to ask you, should churches hire PR and communication officers?
The answer is a big yes. Maybe what would be in question is whether they will want to call them PR officers. Yeah. Considering the connotation that word has acquired over time. Yeah, by the way, tell us about that PR. If somebody says, that was PR, what they mean is basically these guys are just pulling our legs. They don't mean what they are saying, and they are never going to do anything about it. Yes, and yet that is not, when you think of the word PR, it actually means public relations. So it's just two words. Yeah. Public are the stakeholders that you deal with, yes, and relations is to relate. Yes. So the whole idea of this function called PR is just to find a way of relating with those mission critical people I talked about. Absolutely. But over time, it has acquired a negative connotation because some organizations do not do the right thing. They don't even plan to start doing the right thing, but all they do is to employ some people who they expect to go out there and just cover up everything for them. Yeah. So over time, this function has come to be seen as that, but it is not that, because I will tell you for free, I worked for 13 good years, yes, doing public relations and communication. But I can tell you, not a single day did I ever lie on behalf of my organization. And I know that's a story that cannot end here, because a lot of people will say, then how are you working? Yes. Let them look for me, I'll show them how I was working. So it's a connotation. So what do we do now? A lot of people now prefer to call this function strategic communication. Right. So to answer your question, every church needs to have a strategic communication officer. Right. Or a communication officer for that matter. Yes. It can be an officer, it can be a manager, it can be a director, but somebody in charge of communication. Now, this communication is way beyond the media team. All right. Because churches have media team, a media team, but the media team is an aspect of communication. Yes. So you need someone who thinks at a strategic level, yes, to coordinate everything and extend the good work that the media teams are doing. Yes. Yes. So that, and give it direction and purpose. So that then you don't just, because if you leave it to the media team, you just call them, oh, media team, can you do a flyer and put it on our Facebook page, or send it on WhatsApp? So you assume you have communicated, media team have done that. But you're saying you can do more than that. You can refine it. You can do more than that. And for you to do more than that, two things have to happen. Number one, how do you define the function? It is a management function, yes, that helps you to implement the strategy that you have, yes, by bringing all the stakeholders on board. Yes. That means the person who you bring on board, yes, should be one, trained in communication, and two, it should be somebody you can respect to take their advice. Yes. So if you bring a young person, then be willing to listen to that young person, because that young person is trained and they know. Invite them to high-level meetings, because the raw material for a communicator is information. And information is churned sometimes in very high-level places.
Absolutely.
So people who employ communication people and then they put them at the lower ranks, they are not helping themselves. You are paying people in vain because the person you designate to be your communication expert need to be trusted.
Yes.
Need to be somebody you can take their advice.
Yes.
Need to be invited into the boardroom so that they can hear firsthand, because apart from what people say, they are non-verbal communicates. This communication person needs to be able to listen to how the conversations are going, and then they'll be able to later advise you and say, while we were in that meeting, I noticed this and this and this. And so these are some of the things that you need to take care of.
All right.
So it is a very strategic function, way beyond the tactical aspect of media.
Okay.
And the other thing is that, as we were talking before we came on set, crisis communication. Today, think of the churches represented by your viewers. If something happened in your church and you needed to respond, and you know, anytime a crisis happens, the media get interested.
Yes.
Now the external media.
Yes.
And they come for a story. They want to hear, so what is happening, what's going on? The question is, how many church leaders are fully briefed on how to interact with the media, how to answer media questions? How to give media interviews in a way that does not damage their brand, but actually protects it. Absolutely. So the work of this strategic officer will be to be able first to do something we call anticipating crises that could come, and then thinking of, in case this crisis materialize, how would we communicate, training the pastors on how to communicate, and then should, in the unlikely event that a crisis actually materializes, helping in the communication process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry we have to bring this conversation to an end. My guest here, Ruth, is a communication expert, as you've by now learned. And she obviously has a lot of information to share with us. I believe that so far we've helped clarify some of the issues that are needed in communication. And because we must end, I'm going to ask you, Ruth, we have run out of time. In like 30 seconds, look at that camera and talk to the pastors in 30 seconds, your final message.
So my message to us as pastors is let's try to professionalize communication in our organizations. And the easiest place to start is just to get somebody who is a professional to be able to work with you and see how they can help you take your strategy and then plan communication around it. And that's what we call strategic communication. Who are the people we should be talking to? What messages do they need? What channels are we going to use? In case we get into a crisis, how do we get ourselves out of there? And most importantly, how do we engage our mission critical stakeholders?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ruth, for coming on the show. We're so glad to have learned so much from you. And if you want to get in touch with Ruth, there are numbers on the screen, and you can also link up with me, connect you to her. That's all we had for you. This has been your host, Godfrey Geshoke. This is the GG Report. We'll see you another day, same time, same place. God bless you. Have a great week and have a great year. Bye for now.